Good morning again, guys. For those of you who use two devices and you would like to look at your textbook, we are looking at excretion, or I should say homeostasis. That's what the entire chapter is called, but it's on page 175 of the textbook, which I would share on the screen. But if you want to look at it yourself so that you can advance and go back to whatever pages you want while we're looking at it, you can do that. At the beginning of the course, I told you in life processes, we'll be looking at each of the 7 characteristic activities of living organisms, and excretion is one of them, of course. Why do we need to excrete? I want to remind you, unless you have a noisy environment or private going ons in the background where people are having private conversations that you don't really want to get on the system, you can open your mic. You can leave your microphones on. It makes it easier for immediate communication. If you were in a classroom situation, in a formal classroom situation, I'll tell you have to turn on your camera too, but as adults, I expect you to be responsible enough to be there, because sometimes it's difficult to gauge a student's understanding without seeing the expression on their faces when they're listening or paying attention. And that's, to me personally, that's very important, and it's a very important part of face-to-face teaching and learning. That is why in younger persons, I will insist that they have their cameras on so that I can monitor them in that way, as well as be sure that they are paying attention and not probably knocking video game or watching a movie nearby or something. But for you, I'm not going to insist that you turn your camera on, but it would be good if you could have your mics open as much as possible so that you can interact immediately. I don't need you to raise your hand to ask a question. You could just say, sir, and I would pause, because sometimes when I'm dealing with the material, I'm not looking at the screen where the hand is raised, so I would not see that somebody has their hand up until probably sometime later. You could just say, sir, I don't understand what you just said there. Or you want to add something to what I'm saying that you think would be beneficial to the class. Yeah, man. So you don't really have to lock off the mic unless. And I'm telling you, I want you to protect the privacy of your home. So if anything is going on home that you don't need to come to the microphone or at the workplace, you can mute it. Well, I was asking, well, before, let me ask a different question. How would you define excretion?
When you get rid of metabolic waste, like from chemical reaction in the body.
Okay, the very important word I wanted, from I hear that word, that full marks right there, metabolic waste. And if you look at the unit here, which I open this in? I open this in Acrobat Reader so I can highlight. Am I highlighted there? See that? Oh, it looks up. This could only this only selecting this highlight text. Okay, it worked. So they say that by the way, I did not scan the summary for this yet. I had a little thing making up my mind which one we should do next, and I think I would prefer us to do this, deal with the more familiar, than come back to the skeletal system, which is the area that most persons know very little about generally. In human and social biology, within my experience, is the area that persons tend to know least about. You know things about your eyes and sense organs and your skin and what's not. When you come and you start to talk about the skeletal system, some persons are lost. So we wrap back on that one a while. Now, look at this. Many reactions go on inside your body. Some of these produce potentially harmful substances. You know that, such as hydrogen peroxide. You might, hydrogen peroxide is harmful? Of course it's harmful. Drink it and see what will happen. Well, please don't do that. Don't do that. You can gargle your mouth with hydrogen peroxide, but you should never swallow it. Your cells contain the enzyme catalase that converts any hydrogen peroxide produced by our metabolism into water and oxygen before it has any chance to do harm. And you know that when you put hydrogen peroxide on a wound, you see some bubbles being produced, you see it frothing. Those bubbles are oxygen, and those oxygen bubbles are released when the hydrogen peroxide comes into contact with catalase, an enzyme that is present in all living organisms. So that if you do it on any other organism, you should get a similar reaction. Ammonia is another very harmful substance. It is toxic. So ammonia is another very harmful or toxic substance that we produce. And this also needs to be converted into something less harmful as soon as it is produced. We convert it into urea, but unlike oxygen and water, we cannot do anything with urea. So it is excreted from the body in urine. The point we are making here is that your body makes substances that are very dangerous to itself. Some of the substances are converted to less harmful substances, and then your body proceeds to get rid of it, most of the time using a special organ that would get rid of that particular substance. So let's read on. The kidneys are the main excretory organs of the body. Before I go on, can you name any other excretory organ? Clues are there. Anyway, so the kidneys are the main ones. They help to control the water in the body. So if we have too much, we get rid of it in the urine. And if we do not have enough, then the kidneys can retain some. The kidneys are also responsible for getting rid of excess salts. So it helps to regulate your osmotic balance, meaning the concentration of fluids in your body, the concentration of fluids that would be around your cells and inside of your cells. So the kidney, if there's too much salt, you would do one of two things. You would either feel thirsty and drink water, while at the same time, the body would be trying to get rid of the excess salts by passing them into your bladder, which of course would be excreted to the outside. The other excretory organs are the lungs and the liver, and also the skin. Did you know that your skin was an organ? Oh yes, it is.
Sure.
Yes. Covers a wide what you call that? A large surface area. And some people still don't want to bathe. The guy who pushing the cart with the horn, he does blow, does tell people don't bathe. Remember, don't bathe. But if you're going to be excreting stuff from your skin, not all of it is going to just evaporate. Some of it is going to evaporate and leave residue. The water might evaporate and you might have residue. Urea is also excreted through your skin, but not in significant amounts. When you sweat, there's some urea present in the sweat. And even if you're not sweating like how you would when you exercise or do strenuous activity, sweat would still be coming out of your pores. It's just that before it can form into droplets and run down on your skin, it evaporates, but it leaves the salt behind. It leaves the substances that cannot be evaporated behind. So you need to wash that off. You need to take a shower and wash that off from time to time. And of course, areas of the body that would sweat more than others would need to be washed more carefully so that you would remove all the residue. You don't want to leave any food for bacteria to start working on, because when bacteria start feeding on these hormones, excess hormones that were excreted and other substances, they're going to produce unpleasant odors. And in the case of adolescents, preteens, persons who are just going into adolescence, they usually excrete excess hormones because the body is really, really jacked up with growth hormones and reproductive hormones and things that are causing changes to take place in their body as they move into adolescence. So some of the excesses pass out in the skin, and then when they were 8, 9 years old, they used to run up and down and sweat and soak and the clothes thing and no smell. They could have put back on the same clothes the next day and you're not gonna smell anything that bad. But from the time they hit that age, the constituents of the sweat change, things change. So then they usually are not aware of it the same time because they're accustomed smelling themselves, and when your nostrils are accustomed to something, you don't really detect any big change. But as a parent or a guardian or somebody responsible, you should pick up the signal and know it's time for them to use antiperspirant and talk to them about their hygiene and so on. Sometimes you hear Farm 1 and Farm 2 students talking about people green, troubling one another. So just make sure that don't happen near your children. So let's continue, just touching on a little hygiene there. Major sources of metabolic waste. The metabolic waste substances we produce are from thousands of different chemical reactions in the body that are part of our metabolism. Excretion is best defined as the elimination from the body of toxic or poisonous substances, waste products of metabolism, and substances in excess of requirements. Don't make that hot up your head. The definition you gave me is quite adequate. So some of our excretory products would be, let me underline that. Some of our excretory products are going to be urea, bile, which we of course make use of, water, imagine that, mineral salts, carbon dioxide. Which organisms excrete oxygen? Which organisms excrete oxygen? Eumiax.
Sorry, say.
Which organism excrete oxygen? Okay then. Well, nobody need to excrete oxygen, I see.
Yeah.
No organism does excrete oxygen. All right. All right, let me ask you another question, a different way that would make you answer me immediately. Which organism uses carbon dioxide?
The plant.
You're right. Green plants use carbon dioxide. And what do they produce as a waste product?
Oxygen.
Exactly, during photosynthesis. See how your memory does get tracked back up? That's why sometimes you meet another question like that down the road and you go back up to the question a little further up and you say, yes, I get you. But in a test from me, I do my best to ensure that there are no clues. Well, CXC2. So carbon dioxide is produced by aerobic respiration. It is also produced by anaerobic respiration, as you would have seen, but we also produce lactic acid in the process. Now the carbon dioxide is transported as hydrogen carbonate ions. That is something like a salt, it's dissolved. It's transported there to the lungs where it is converted back into carbon dioxide before diffusing into the blood, from the blood into the alveoli. So we excrete carbon dioxide when we breathe out. To make things simple for little children, and you are not little children, they would tell them we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. By now, you should have figured that it is a little more complicated than that. You breathe in air which contain a mixture of gases, including both the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. You actually breathe in carbon dioxide every time you inhale because it is present in the atmosphere. You breathe in nitrogen, you breathe in water vapor. You breathe in a number of gases and you breathe back out most of them. The difference being is less oxygen coming back out and more carbon dioxide coming back out. Because when the blood gets to the lungs, the excess carbon dioxide diffuses into the alveoli, and when you exhale, that comes out, of course. What about urea? Where does urea come from? See all you ladies here who love chicken?
Protein.
And don't watch me no kind of way, because all you know all you love chicken bad. I do. I ain't say man don't love it too, but women have a special thing with chicken. So in the Caribbean, generally, we don't tend to get, on average, I'm speaking, I'm not talking about you rich people like Crystal. The average ones, we don't tend to get enough protein in our diet. We tend to have more carbohydrates, and for persons living close to fishing village, they tend to fare better. But generally, you look on the typical Caribbean plate, and our culture is similar all over the Caribbean when it comes to certain things. You get a big whack of food, whether it's rice or if it's boiling and you have your dashi and your tanya, your egg and your dumpling and whatever. One little piece of chicken wing or one fish, one sprat. And you see the imbalance there. Right? There are times when you have it in abundance and there are times when it is smaller. And plus, the good for nothing man, the mother going to take most of the meat and give. Very unfair. He ain't doing nothing in the place more than cussing people when he come over. Anyway, we tend not to get enough, but generally, we get protein from plant material. You just have to know if you can't get enough from the thing that you could use more leguminous plants, beans and soy products and that kind of thing. And make sure you have enough of these amino acids that your body needs. Now, remember when proteins are broken down, they're broken down into their molecular subunits, right? Proteins are made up of amino acids. And once they are digested, that is what you're going to have as the end product, amino acids, and that is what is absorbed into your bloodstream from the intestines, amino acids. Now the amino acids, they would travel around the body in the blood, and whichever cells need to be making proteins would take these amino acids and do what needs to be done, right? Remember the ribosomes in the cells? They do that. But your body can't store the amino acids. So let's say you eat 3 buckets of KFC this morning. I know somebody in here, I believe, could do that now, but I ain't going to call no name. If you eat 3 buckets of KFC this morning, and your body is going to digest that, by 2 o'clock, all that done digest long time. And a lot of it being absorbed into the, but you can't store the excess amino acids. So it come like you waste. You waste the KFC. It tastes good, yes, you enjoy the taste, but your body is not going to make use of most of it because it cannot store it. The excess amino acids are broken down in the liver and it forms ammonia. The whole process is called deamination because amino acids are made up of a molecule that has what you call like an amino part and a sugar part, so that the amino part is removed from the sugar part of that molecule. So your body is not going to get rid of the carbohydrate part of that molecule or the sugar part. It stores that or uses it for energy. But the amino part is converted to ammonia, which is a dangerous chemical that is further converted to urea. Back to the sugar part, you see that protein can make you put on weight still, because even if you eat excess, your body does not get rid of the entire excess. Okay, there's a sugar part to the amino acid molecule that would be stored or used for energy. So you could put on weight if you decide, okay, I ain't eating no I ain't eating no bread and pasta and all them things. They're just going to eat meat, kill all them animals around the yard. You're still gonna put on weight if you're eating it in excess more than your body could make use of. So we cannot excrete amino as it is. I'm here. It is very toxic and it would be fatal if we let it circulate in the blood before leaving via the kidneys. Ammonia would increase the pH in the cytoplasm of our cells, decreasing the activity of enzymes. Remember that? Enzymes be working at an optimum pH. So if there's ammonia, it will cause your body to increase the pH, meaning it's coming slightly alkaline. And the activities of enzymes would slow down. So to prevent this from happening, liver cells react ammonia with carbon dioxide to make urea. So your body makes use of some of the carbon dioxide there. Excuse me. But this is still harmful if it is allowed to accumulate in the blood above a certain concentration. So you have to continue with the process, and the kidneys would remove the excess urea from the blood. It will do the filtration. Kidneys are very, very important organ. It acts as a filter and water concentration regulator. So some key terms here: metabolic waste, products of reactions in cells such as carbon. You know that already. Excretion, the removal of toxic waste from the body. Toxic material are waste products of metabolism and substances in excess of requirement. Let's look at the bile. It's not boil, eh? So Vincent love to put in O where there's no O and take out the O where it is. So when you're talking about aluminum foil, people say foil instead of file. And when I mean it's foil, but see, people say file instead of foil. And you have things like pint, where people call the bottle, the glass bottles, a pint because they used to be pint size. They're different sizes now. So they talk about the juicy pint or the Hyron pint, but they say point. But actually that came about from the measurement that was the capacity of the bottle of pint. So point and pint, boil and bile. We're dealing with bile, there's no O. So bile pigments are made from the hemoglobin molecules in worn out red blood cells that have been broken down by the liver. So if you were wondering what happens to the red blood cells, since we say they don't live too long and they can't reproduce themselves, they're broken down by the liver. And some of the material from that is recycled. Most of the bile pigments are excreted in bile, which pass from the gallbladder. Well, it is stored in the gallbladder first, of course, into the small intestines. If they are not excreted, then they accumulate in the skin, causing it to go yellow, a condition known as jaundice. In St. Vincent, jaundice. But in the rest of the English-speaking world, it's jaundice. It's not jaundice, okay? But it's not jaundice neither. It's like an in-between pronunciation, jaundice. And I don't know if you ever had any problem food poisoning. Sometimes you eat certain substances and you might get jaundice because your liver is working overtime to do certain things and it might excrete more bile than usual. The person's eyes might become yellow too. We don't mean yellow like the NDP flag, but yeah, you know, the yellow tinge. If you see somebody, if you have a child and you see that happening, then you know there's something going on and you should seek medical attention. Don't wait until your child lie down and can't move and think to talk about you going doctor. Water. We need water, but water is a metabolic waste product too. So water is a metabolic waste product, and yes, of aerobic respiration that occurs in I don't know why they say in almost all cells of the body, you know. I don't know. For all the biology I study in my life, you can't put almost there. Every living cell has to respire in our body. We're not bacteria. There are some organisms that respire anaerobically, which meaning they don't use oxygen. They can carry out anaerobic respiration, use materials and produce energy from it without using oxygen. Human cells require the use of oxygen to live because the mitochondria in the cells have to do what they have to do. Now the red blood cells might not need to. So maybe that is why they put in that. Anyway, water produced from respiration is known as metabolic water. Some desert animals rely on it almost entirely as their diet consists of very dry food. So the water they produce from their own metabolism, they try to make use of it back immediately. This does not apply to us. And if we have more water in the body than we need, the excess is excreted. Some is inevitably lost by evaporation in the lungs, and some is lost in sweat. But the kidney controls how much we lose in the urine. Like I tell you, you lose water every minute of the day in sweat. You lose more on a hot day, and you lose less on a very cold day. Like this morning, I have on t-shirt, I have on polo, and I still have on a hoodie. It's cold here, it's cold.
So they're foreign?
Yeah, and I have on a tam, one of those knitted tams. I tell you, is in the porch. The porch has the most space where I could spread out properly and do my thing. So I have a table in the porch, and I don't want, if I'm in the house, the activities and so on to interfere, the sound, phone call, conversation. I don't want all those things coming in. And bedroom now. Can't bring all in my bedroom, that won't be proper. So I'm out here in the cold. And I would not be losing as much water by perspiration as I would on a regular day. You see, the perspiration, the evaporation of the sweat helps to keep your skin cool. Your skin is part of your body. So blood passing close to the skin would be cooled, and that cool blood would return to the warmer parts of the body that might probably be getting a little too warm and cool it down. When we talk about transporting heat, so the heat, the hot blood, the hotter blood comes close to the skin where it is cooled. As water evaporates from the skin, it causes the temperature of the skin to fall. When water changes from liquid to gas, it requires energy to do so in the form of heat, always. And this heat has to be taken from somewhere. When you, let me help you to understand it better. When you spray cologne on your skin, these days you use alcohol, you use a lot of rubbing alcohol sanitizer. When you put the alcohol on your skin, you feel the coolness almost immediately. Because as the alcohol evaporates from your skin, the heat it needs to change, or the energy it needs to change from a liquid on your skin to the gas, to the vapor, it takes that energy in the form of heat from your skin, so your skin feels cooler. The same process happens when water comes through the pores on your skin and reaches the surface. Most of it evaporates immediately. If you're sweating in excess, then you would see the sweat accumulating on your skin, but that in itself would evaporate too. It's the same reason why you would use a fan or a book and you fan the air against your skin so that it would take away the water molecules, that evaporating faster, and you would cool yourself faster. You're speeding up the evaporation process and you're cooling yourself faster. Some science there for you. So you can get rid of water that way. When you exhale, you get rid of water also. You ever try to look inside your mouth with a mirror, a piece of mirror? Like you're trying to examine your teeth or anything, and it gets fogged up because the water vapor in your breath that you're exhaling, the water vapor actually, when it meets the cool surface of the glass, it condenses on it. It changes from gas or from vapor to liquid, and it makes it look foggy. You have seen reporters too, speaking in cold regions, and when they're talking, you see I can't say you see the water vapor, but the water vapor actually condenses and form like a small cloud coming out of the mouth. That to tell you that we exhale water vapor. There's the evidence. Now the urine, the kidney makes that adjustment for you. It determines how much needs to be excreted. On a cold day, since you will not be losing a lot of the excess water through your skin, more water is excreted by the kidney. So what you might have happening if you're drinking the same amount of water, the urine is not going to be as concentrated. You would see it looking a little more clear than transparent. If you on a hot day, you went into town early in the morning, you don't want to use any bathroom in town. You come back home, your urine is pretty yellow and concentrated, especially if you're using multivitamins and so on, and your body has to get rid of excess salts and so on. And especially if like somebody in this class eat 3 buckets of KFC one time, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of urea to get rid of. Crystal, don't watch me bad and I never call your name.
Sam, never tell us.
Okay, the mineral salts. Mineral salts are not produced in any chemical reactions in the body. Yeah? These salts or ions enter the body in the diet, like KFC. We cannot control exactly how many of these ions we need in our diet each day, because we're gonna lose it. It's because it's soluble, it's gonna pass out. So any excess are excreted. Your body has to try to maintain the balance regardless. It doesn't matter night or day, the concentration of fluids in your body has to be the same. So once it is in excess, it has to go. Any excess has to be excreted. These are ions such as sodium, potassium, phosphate, and calcium ions. These are present in a lot of the stuff we eat. Let me ask you a question here now. This is like revision. Name one food product that might be very rich in potassium. If you're from St. Vincent, you can answer that. You know? Rich in
potassium.
Mm-hmm. That's popular. You from Greg's, you should know. Still produce a lot over there.
A provision.
Banana.
True.
Yeah. Banana is an excellent source of potassium. When my father was having his difficulties the other day and with kidney problem, he could not eat banana because of the levels of potassium in his blood from the tests. You can't go add to that because the kidney was not functioning as it should.
Some of it too.
Yeah. All the Musa is the species, all of that family, Mafube, plantain, grindy, and so on. You could spell Mafube, by the way. You don't have to spell it now,
Yeah.
I don't know who
They hard to spell.
how that pronunciation. Mafaba. Okay.
E-A-G-H.
I don't know who invented that. I could understand crap would have come from French. Those are words that are hard to spell. Just a frog, a toad. So carbon dioxide is removed from the lungs and breathed out in exhaled air. The kidneys remove urea, water, salts, and bile pigments in urine. Sweat is made by filtering the blood. Because you have sweat glands, it's not like your tissue fluid just oozing through and straining through and coming to the surface of the skin, you know. You actually have sweat glands that produce this stuff. So inevitably, where am I? And so inevitably contains substances that the body does not want, which explains why water, salts, and urea are passed out of the body in this way. It is arguable whether this is really excretion because you cannot rely on sweating as a way of excreting waste, whereas kidneys work all the time. I would argue and say that it is excretion because according to the definition of excretion, you are getting rid of metabolic waste products in that way.
Mhm.
It is. What I ask you to do here, create a table to summarize the information about excretory products. Their source, the excretory substances, their sources, where they are produced, and how we excrete them. Many of the methods of excretion mentioned in this chapter are described elsewhere in the book. This is pretty easy. We're not going to do that right now. I racing with time. I was to tell you before we start, I have a call I have to go by for a parent conference with Farm Fives by intermediate high school concerning mainly the SBA. And the thing is not my picnic, but I'm responsible for the picnic in that school from since Farm 3. So I would have to, that's why I hustling and I trying to see how much we could cover before we finish. I don't think we could go till 11:30. Now we have to look at a little more detail at the systems, okay? Because we would have looked at the lungs somewhat, but we would need to look at the skin and the kidneys. The kidneys would require some more detail. Much of the excretion we talk about would have to do with the kidney. We're going to have to look at diabetes. Let me break it down. Let me look at peek back at the syllabus there. Yes. The structure and function of the kidney, the structure and function of the skin. Try to get a better understanding of homeostasis, not homo. There's an E in it. Homeostasis.
Come in, go here, where the rain come in.
Well, finally, you have to put in a headphone. When I get rich, I'll buy you a headphone. Might be 20 years from now. I used to be rich, but COVID took my money. Lies. I know, put it in closer to your ears, man.
Sarah, be comfortable to my ears. Okay, I'm hearing it now.
Wait, I'm trying to adjust the thing with my microphone to bring it closer to my mouth. So that would be louder in the system. Let's try, you know. As long as I didn't choke out my eye. Okay, so my mouth, it in my mouth. Ouch. Real close. Yeah, homeostasis and regulation of water and that kind of thing. Regulation of body temperature. All these are conditions that need to be kept the same. Huh? So we are born with a pair of kidneys. Some persons only have one because they might have had some sort of kidney disease. Sometimes people get bladder infections that they don't pay attention to. They don't get them treated, and the pathogens travel up the ureter and affect their kidneys, causing kidney damage. You don't want that happening. You might have been warned about holding your urine. It's okay to hold your urine for a while, but you don't try to hold your urine like for 24 hours and that kind of thing. Your bladder could only hold this much, and your kidneys are continually producing urine. When your bladder is distended to the maximum, the urine would travel back up. Didn't mean to do it that way. scroll down. The urine would travel back up these tubes. You could see how a person with an infected bladder, how disease causing organisms that were affecting the bladder could come up to the kidney and affect the delicate kidney. Your bladder could only stretch to a certain amount. I personally would pee my skin before my bladder could reach that. I just can't hold it that much. I don't think so. I'm one of those persons, I was a bedwetter. So when my brother who was 2 years younger than me stopped wet in bed, I was still wet in bed. And that is not something I had any control over. Could be embarrassing, of course, because you wake up and you meet this puddle and you shame because the younger one ain't doing it and you doing it still, you feel bad. But I have never researched it, but I want to think that the person does not feel the sensation when the bladder stretches. The sensation is strong enough to wake you up to make you go and urinate, or that the bladder just relaxes itself when it reaches that area. So if you're not conscious, it just lets itself out. So the kidneys, we have a pair, left and right. They're located just above your hips, the hip bone. And I say your hips, I don't mean where you would see the widest part of your hips. Where your natural waist, just basically in that area where the ribs finish. They're not protected by the rib cage, you know. They're a little below, but a little closer to the back. So wherever you feel your hip bone is just above that area, but closer to the back. They can be easily damaged. As a matter of fact, in self-defense, we were taught to, I just teach you some wickedness sometimes. You hit your assailant in those areas. It's very painful and it should be able to stop them. So sometimes it's not how hard you hit somebody alone, it's where you hit them. Because you might be the weakest nashy person, but you know exactly where you're hitting and what you're hitting to stop your opponent. Take care of your kidneys. Let's see what's going on with these. Now the kidneys are paired organs which form part of the urinary system, and you can see them in the picture there. There are other structures in the urinary system, and you can see them there in relation to the kidney. So you have the bladder, which of course is a very important part. You can't be producing urine 24/7 and have it draining out of your body. Come on, you would be you would always be wet, man. You can't go sit down anywhere. You just get up every time you get up it wet. No. Just as your body would store the feces in the rectum, it would also store the urine in the bladder so that you can conveniently release the urine. You don't have to be walking like a leaking water truck. So in the kidneys, ions and small molecules such as water and glucose are removed from the blood, and most of these are returned to the blood before it leaves the kidney. However, any that are not needed or are surplus to the body's need become part of the urine. Let me explain that to you. These substances I mentioned just now, ions, small molecules such as water and glucose, when the blood goes to the kidney, it goes there under high pressure. When it goes into a structure, which renders it to be under high pressure. So all these substances are filtered out of the blood. They actually leave the blood vessels and go into a special tube called the Bowman's capsule. And along the length of that capsule and the tube, which you'll see just now, you have blood vessels in a particular area that would reabsorb what the body needs. Glucose is reabsorbed unless you're diabetic. There should be no glucose in your urine. So the glucose that was filtered out, it will be reabsorbed. Ions that are needed would be reabsorbed. Okay? And the amount of water, depending on the concentration, so would be reabsorbed. The rest continues along the tube and joins up the big tube over here to the big tube over here called the ureter, and travels down to the bladder where it is stored. It trickles down there. So the urine passes from the kidneys to the bladder where it is stored. When the bladder is full, or whenever you feel like, the urine is passed out of the body during urination. And there's a kind of reaction in your body. Sometimes you drink water, you want to urinate. If you wanted to urinate before and somebody offer you a drink, take the drink and go with it. Don't drink at the same time. You're gonna increase the chance of you wanting to pass urine. If you go to the doctor's office and you forget to walk with urine for a test, or you need to produce it, they might give you a glass of water to drink. Of course, the water you drink is not converted to urine the same time. But because of the sudden change in concentration in the blood, the body say, okay, whatever I have here, I'm going to send that on right away because it's supposed to bring in more water. You will have water in your blood, sorry, urine in your bladder, even if you don't feel like urinate. But it is not enough to trigger the urination event. But by drinking some water, that could happen. The kidney structure. Want to look at. This is a kidney with the ureter attached. Notice how it is spelled. There's ureter and there is urethra. If I, okay, let me just scroll it up the back a bit here. You have urethra and you have, where is it, ureter. These are two different tubes. If you label them incorrectly, one is going to think that you do not know what you're talking about, which one is which. How are you going to remember? The bigger one is the one closest to the outside. I used to say the raw one. The raw one is the one leading to the outside. And what do I mean by raw one? This. R-A. Ra. Urethra. Outer door. That's the one that leads from the bladder to the outside world. For the well, you would know from the reproductive system if you don't know. For the female, that tube does not mix with the rest of the reproductive system. It just hits the outside wall through the vulva between the lips. But for the male, that tube has to be shared with the tube that delivers semen. So it uses the same tube through the penis as to get to the outside world. They say woman more complicated than man, you see? Anyhow, which is life. So you have this, you see it look like a kidney bean. You could understand why the bean is called kidney bean. Its color as well as its shape. So you see the shape of the kidney. Just draw a big bean. The outer region of the kidney is called the cortex. That's out here. This area that you see in the diagram in red. It's called the cortex. Excuse me. Underneath that, you have this is called the medulla. This word here. So you have the cortex on the outside, and you have the medulla. And then inside of that, you have these pyramids where the tubes from the medulla join up. And then you have the pelvis. Scroll it up a little for you. So the three main regions, the cortex, the medulla, and pelvis. CMP. Look, one of our friends here, one of those words. Renal vein, renal artery, renal, kidney. When a person has renal failure, it's a kidney failure. A renal disease, it's kidney. Renal, kidney. Hepatic, liver. Cardiac, you tell me. Heart, very good. Pulmonary, I have to hit you with one more.
So the liver.
I say hepatic is liver, don't make me come through after you, no?
Lungs?
Yes, pulmonary is lungs. Pulmonary is lungs. You look, I haven't learned the art yet to come through the internet, but I'm working on it. So you have these three main regions. You're gonna have to look at a detailed structure of a kidney tubule, because inside here you have millions of tubules, but we need to just study the structure of one, of course, because it would be related to the structure of all of them. So we talk about the kidney tubule or nephron. Sometimes a person with kidney disease, they have, it's called nephritis, which would be the inflammation of the nephrons. Remember the itis thing? Neditis would be a disease. That might be a dangerous disease, boy, neditis. But many diseases end with itis, and they have to do with inflammation of the part that was named. But you would not hear kidneyitis, but you would hear nephritis. So let's move on. By the way, this is a kidney cut open. You see the cortex, you see the medulla, and you see the inside the pelvis. Let's move on. If you want to bring a goat kidney for me to dissect, or sheep kidney, I would gladly do that, but you have to leave the kidney with me. I have to cook that. I'm only giving you back if you're cooking it for everybody. We are going to go through that activity though. Well, let me ask you a question. So the kidney excretes urine, which is stored in the bladder and then passed out to the outside world. Could you say that the large intestines or the colon excrete feces, which is stored in the rectum and then passed out? Could you say that the colon excrete feces?
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot you. Let me tell you why. Because you go back on your own word. Feces are not products of metabolic waste. Don't make me trick you. Don't make me catch you with them thing there. Remember, the feces is not metabolic waste. But you see a similarity there. Things are being stored. So teachers understand, well, most teachers would understand how people process information. And to see if you have a clear understanding of certain concepts, they would put similar situations to you. Your mind is automatically going to compare them. And as Oliver said, if you're not mind sharp, you go on and put the thing wrong. So testing is a tricking thing to just to make sure you're clear. Kidney functions. Sometimes you do a blood test, they say they go and check liver functions and kidney functions. What they actually do sometimes is check to see the levels of certain substances that are excreted by the kidney. There's a tolerance, which means a lower level and an upper level between which these substances should fall. And if your urine contains an amount or a concentration that is higher than where it should be, that is an indication that something is wrong there. Or if it is lower. Sometimes when they test your blood too, they have upper and lower tolerance, upper and lower limits of where each substance should be. So the functions of the kidney are summarized in this table below. Note that the kidneys have functions other than excretion. You only need to be familiar with the first two functions described. And that's excretion and osmoregulation. Osmo, from osmosis, talking about the concentration of salts, concentration of solution. It also controls the pH of the blood, how acid or how alkaline the blood is. And it is an endocrine organ too. You hear about adrenaline? Watch how the word spell. Adrenal. Right, adrenaline. The adrenaline gland is secreted right on the top of the kidney. Sorry, located right on the top of the kidney. So these functions, excretion. Urea and certain waste products, waste substances, including those made in the body when alcohol, drugs, and other toxins are metabolized, these excretory wastes are removed from the blood and passed out in the urine. Now, alcohol is not digested. Alcohol is not digested. Alcohol is absorbed directly into the bloodstream through mucous membrane. Yes, it could be absorbed through the lining of the mouth. So even if you put a mouthful of strong rum in your mouth and you leave it there, it will start being absorbed through the lining of the mouth. So in the stomach, it is absorbed, and in the intestines, it is absorbed and it goes into the blood. That's why people feel intoxicated so quickly. You would eat and your food taking a while to digest, but alcohol don't need to be digested, and it is taken in. Once it reaches certain levels, your liver sees this as a problem, and your liver is going to try to break down the alcohol.
So you absorb, so because you hot, that is all this in your room and skin up your face.
But I don't know why they uglifying themselves. You don't have a certain level of ugliness built in already, and you're still going to ring up your face. They're going to ring up your face. I see man drinking thing and going, so me going to think that is something good for me?
So in a hat?
I don't drink. You can't ask me. You have to ask. I mean, let's stop calling my name, eh? But he lived down Greg's. Well, I don't. He married last year before, right?
Who you talk about there?
A teacher, just not calling him.
Me know.
He must do skin up. He immune. Not immune. I hope he stopped though. But anyway, the body, a lot of water would be produced when the alcohol is broken down. Some of it would be converted to water, and it has to be passed out. That's why sometimes you see guys drinking, they have to go and urinate. The drinking beers is not because of just the amount of fluid that they take into the body. Some of it is actually going to be converted to water when the liver breaks it down, and they have to pass this out. I used to hate walking through town after carnival. The next morning, you have to go into town. Oh boy. It's like every corner, every little 2x4 inlet was converted to a toilet. Like between buildings, people urinate that. And when the sun hit that the next day, oh my goodness. Because the amount of alcohol that does be consumed during the carnival reveling on the streets is a lot, and the stuff have to come back out. Somebody jumping in a van with whoever, going to go and look for one of those portable toilets and come back. You might meet the woman. Oh, what is song going? Can't remember how the thing go. Fireman are one of them. You know, see woman. Oh no, it's not fireman. It's a drink of rum and a car. Remember? Yes. what's his name? Scorpion. Which woman I come with? Alcohol is dangerous in more than one way. So osmoregulation, the surplus water is removed from the blood and incorporated into the urine. So if your blood is too dilute, it means your tissue fluid, the fluid that is around all the cells of your body, is also going to be too dilute. And you know what that means? Water is going to move from the dilute solution around the cells into the cells. They don't have any cell wall. They are going to absorb water until they burst, till the concentration is equal. So your body has to remove the excess water, keep the right amount of salts, and vice versa. So the kidney tubules now, this is the guy I was talking about. How come I can't see the corner of this? Oh, this is something, eh? Oh, it was there. Now here it is. Each kidney contains about 1 million microscopic tubules called nephrons. It is in these nephrons that blood is filtered and urine is formed. And the diagram below shows it. We'll look at it in a while. It is composed of a long tube. Oops. It is composed of a long tube with two coiled regions. In between the coiled parts is a long loop called the loop of Henle. In biology, they love to name body structures after persons who either discovered or did a lot of work on them in honor of the person. So, you know, Henle would have been a biologist. And where is it? I don't see any name here. They just say loop. But this would be the loop of Henle. Henle with a capital H, of course. And up here, also, why they put Bowman and they don't want to put Henle?
Racist.
Yeah, I understand. Henle must be a black man. So, Bowman is an Indian.
Sure.
One end of the nephron has a cup-like shape, the Bowman's capsule, enclosing a knot, KNOT, a knot of blood capillaries called the glomerulus. Glomerulus with a U. Okay. Students tend to say glomerulus. Some of them never saw the word because the only thing they know about the topic is what the teacher said. They don't read a book and they don't write a note. So when they go to write it now, they spell it incorrectly. They spell it how they think they hear it sound. So it's glomerulus. But in saying glomerulus, it sounds kind of like glomerulus. Your ears would tend to hear that. So I just want to point out the spelling from audio clock to you. The other end leads into a wider tube called the collecting duct, which passes down into the pyramid. Remember the pyramid was these parts, right? So the long end of the tube empties out here, down into the pyramid, where it meets the, what do you call that? The pelvis. Let's go back down. So some structures you should know. You should know the Bowman's capsule. You should know that. You should know the Bowman's capsule. And this knot of tissues. So the tube comes in thick. I don't like how they have this one. This is supposed to look thick. And this one leaving supposed to look small. So that you have high pressure in here. You're forcing it in a large tube and it's trying to come out in a small tube. So some of the substances would ooze out or get filtered out into the test tube. You see the how the arrows going? So that should be clear for you. Right. So you have a larger tube going in here, the artery, and you have a small one coming out, so that the substances move over into that from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. Now, this coiling of the tube, a coil is called a convolution. When you finish science, you're supposed to have additional vocabulary. When something is convoluted, that means it is coiled up. See, you have a long extension cord and you did not roll it up properly and you're trying to loose it out afterwards. The whole extension cord is convoluted. It's coiled up. They have something here about absorbing under microscope. We don't have any microscope. So just to follow the journey through this, the blood comes in here, substances are filtered out of it, including mineral ions, water, glucose. So these substances leave and they enter into the Bowman's capsule, travels down the first convoluted tubule. Some substances are reabsorbed. You notice this blood vessel that continues from here, right? Is the same blood vessel that branches here where the reabsorption is going to take place. Why these people didn't put in the arrow? Let me see. So substances now are going to leave this tube and oh, you can't get a small enough line. The substances are going to leave the convoluted tubules, the one you see looking orangish, beige or whatever, and go into the pink blood vessel. So it is actually getting back some of the substances that came out here. Some come back here. Down in this loop is where most of the water is reabsorbed. And in the next convoluted tubules, you have some more reabsorption taking place. Now, because this one is near, this first convoluted tubule is near to the beginning of the tube. It is in close proximity. Proximity has to do with how near something is to another thing. It is in close proximity. It is called the proximal convoluted tubule. And because this one is in the distance, it is called the distal convoluted tubule. Tell your vocabulary would increase, you know. It's not no bad word. Proximal is close, distal is far. So you have two convoluted tubules. Let's go down some more. So up in the cortex now is where you have this part of the tubule. The loop of Henle goes down into the medulla, comes back up, you have another convolution, and then that tube empties itself into the collecting duct, which leads to the pyramid and into the cortex. Not cortex, the pelvis. So let me bring this down so we could read it a bit. Not going to read this. This is basically what we're saying, but their own description with a spaghetti. Let's go down to this part. The two main processes taking place in the nephrons. Remember, the nephron is the same kidney tubule, but this is the correct biological term we should use to describe it, the nephron. Ultrafiltration, that's the first process, and then selective reabsorption, that's the second process. These are the two main processes taking place in the nephron. So what is ultrafiltration? That is when the blood is the blood comes into the glomerulus and substances are forced out under pressure. That's why it's called ultrafiltration, as opposed to just passive filtration, like if you put something on a strainer and you allow it to drain out. Ultrafiltration would be like you put the thing in the strainer and you try to force it. You probably use a big spoon or something. There was a time when we were getting some dirty sugar. I say dirty sugar, the sugar actually contained sediments, really poor quality. And you used to have to strain the sugar. If you're going to make tea, you're going to have to make sugar water and strain it. So when you pour the sugar solution into the strainer with a cloth, it would take a while to come through because the sediments would settle. But what we used to do sometimes is you take up the cloth in the strainer, you take it up and twist it like a balloon, so you would squeeze out the liquid faster. That in that case, you could compare that to ultrafiltration taking place under force or pressure. So you have that taking place in the glomerulus. Remember, the glomerulus is that knot of tissues up in here. That's the glomerulus. So that is filtered into the Bowman's capsule. And from those tube, the rest of the tubule, the convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle and the, well, let me give it the proper name, the proximal convoluted tubule and the distal convoluted tubule, and in between those, the loop of Henle, you have selective reabsorption taking place. So the filtrate inside of these tubes, some of the substances from that filtrate is going to be reabsorbed back into the blood vessels or blood capillaries surrounding that nephron. So let's see how they explain it to you here. Filtration, ultrafiltration. Filtration is a process that separates particles of different sizes. The term ultrafiltration is used when the particles being separated are very small, that is, molecules or ions. Figure figure, but figure B24, I have to scroll that up a little so you can see it. Shift it a little. Right, so you can see that better. That diagram there shows how ultrafiltration occurs. Blood in the glomerulus is under high pressure. And let's read the other piece over here. It says, boy, you better start to write down word. You see these two words, afferent, and efferent. They're opposite in meaning. Afferent is where it goes in, efferent is where it goes out, like effluence. The afferent blood vessel builds up. In the afferent blood vessel, blood pressure builds up in the glomerulus because this has a wider diameter than the efferent blood vessel over here, where the blood leaves. So I would have explained that to you earlier. We continue reading. This comes about because the blood vessel entering the glomerulus has a larger internal diameter than the vessels leaving the glomerulus, creating a buildup of high pressure in the glomerulus capillaries. Like all capillaries, the cells that make the lining have small holes or pores in them. Around the capillaries, like a sleeve, is a fibrous membrane that functions like a sieve. A sieve is a strainer. The blood pressure inside the glomerular capillaries forces substances that are small enough to go through the pores in the cells lining the capillaries and then through the membrane into Bowman's capsule. This movement of molecules is shown by the dark blue arrows, and that's what we have here coming through there. So the molecules of the substances that would pass through is shown by these arrows, of course, and that would continue down the tubule. The mixture of substances that form inside the Bowman's capsule is called the ultrafiltrate. The main constituents of this fluid are water, glucose, ions, for example, sodium, chloride, and potassium, amino acids, and urea. Red blood cells and large molecules such as protein remain in the blood because they are too large to pass through the pores and the fibrous membrane. They don't ever get out. If a person is urinating blood, something wrong. All those things are indication of something going wrong in the body. Your urine is cloudy. It's not transparent, like, well, not transparent, translucent. Let's say coconut oil or banana juicy. Something is wrong. It's not supposed to be cloudy like coconut water. Not supposed to have blood in it neither. I can't tell you how it's supposed to taste. Some guys taste it and say it's salty, but I ain't going to try. I'm not going to try. I believe them. It's settled for unbelief. Just grabbing something else here. A second. Going to try to get a little summer speed up. Now, all the glucose, some of the salts, and much of the water are needed by the body. All the glucose. Your body does not see glucose as a useless thing or something that should be gotten rid of. It doesn't matter how much glucose comes through there, it's gonna take back in all. Because it's either you're going to use it now, or we're going to store it for a rainy day. We're going to store it for a time when your body can't get enough food. So it will use it up. So all the glucose is reabsorbed, some of the salts is reabsorbed, and much of the water. Now the cells that line the first part of the nephron reabsorb these substances from the filtrate. So in your diagram here, let me see, selective reabsorption. Okay, they're talking about the first coiled tube. The substances are reabsorbed. I'm looking for figure B21. They're sending me all the way back up here. Boy, oh boy. This one. All the substances that are in the, all the substances that are in the ultrafiltrate, that is the substances that came through here, they would eventually pass along the nephron into the collecting ducts leading to the pelvis. They would eventually pass along the nephron and into the collecting duct leading to the pelvis. But this does not happen because most are reabsorbed into the blood capillaries, as I was saying, from various parts of the nephron. So in the first coiled tubule, that's up here, let's deal with that. Now it says, this diagram shows the efferent blood vessel taking blood away from the glomerulus forms a second capillary network around the first coiled tubule. So this blood vessel, it forms a network of capillaries around this. And the cells lining this part of the tubule absorb substances from the ultrafiltrate and pass them back into the bloodstream. Basically summarizing what I said before. Some of the substances pass across the cells by diffusion, but active transport is required to move all of the glucose from the ultrafiltrate. Much of the water in the ultrafiltrate is reabsorbed by osmosis. And we have a table that will show us how the kidney is adapted to do this reabsorption. So we're running back down the road again. this one. Table showing how the kidneys are adapted for reabsorption. You have a lot of tubes, over 1 million. So that increases the surface area for reabsorption. The tubes are long, and that of course increases the surface area for reabsorption. The tubes are coiled. This allows tubules to be long, but to be contained in a very small space. So basically, you come back to the same thing, increasing the surface area for reabsorption. Cells lining the tubes have microvilli on their inner surface. Microvilli, remember the villi, the finger-like structures. Microvilli increases surface area of the membrane of each cell lining the tubule without increasing its overall cell. I don't think you would ever see a question on something like this because I'm using the textbook itself, and the textbook tend to give additional information to aid better understanding. And overzealous textbooks sometimes give you information beyond what the syllabus actually requires, but it would help you to understand the material better if you get the information. Sometimes you say, worry about, how do I remember all these? This is to aid your understanding. So the cells lining the tubules have many mitochondria in their cytoplasm, and the mitochondria produce ATP, which is a source of energy for the reabsorption by active transport. What happens in the loop of Henle? The loop of Henle works to increase the salt content of the tissues in the medulla. This helps in the reabsorption of water from the ultrafiltrates in the second coiled tubules and the conducting ducts. You are not expected to be familiar with the complex process involved. So they mention in this here, like I was telling you just now, they just feel like talk. No man, they're just trying to increase your understanding, but really and truly, this does not require as much detail as this particular book is putting out here. And to confirm that for you, I'll just read from the syllabus. I'll just find that. This is what you have to do. Students should be able to discuss the importance of excretion in human beings. We did that. We looked at some of the dangerous substances produced by metabolism that, if allowed to accumulate in the body, would become toxic, and some of them would, well, all of them would need to be removed. Some are removed directly, some are converted into safer substances, then removed, right? The next one, explain the roles of the organs involved in excretion, and the organs we're talking about are the lungs, skin, and kidney. So we're dealing with the kidney. You're supposed to relate the structure of the kidney, the structures of the kidney to their function. And they give some further information, include labeling of internal structures of the kidney. So, you know, you have to know to label glomerulus, Bowman's capsule, and so on and so on. The structure and function of the nephron, differentiation between the renal artery and renal vein. The renal artery is usually bigger. Ultrafiltration, you have to look at that, which we did. Selective reabsorption of substances. And we have not gotten to the composition of urine and include a brief explanation of the process and importance of renal dialysis. When people have kidney failure, they have to be hooked up to this machine called a dialysis machine that would carry out a function similar to what the kidney does, so that the person's blood can be filtered in a similar way. And that is it for what they want you to know about the kidneys. So when we come across some of this additional information, don't let it scare you. That's why I give you the syllabus. Don't let it scare you. I have never seen questions going into that detail like if you're doing medical science, all right? If you read the entire textbook, it would be good. You'll have a lot of knowledge. and you'll be able to probably explain things better. But when you're in a bind and you're trying to get through quickly with the bare minimum, you might not want to read all that stuff. You might not want to read all of that. So let's go on here now. The second coil, where's my time? Oh my goodness. The second coil, tubule and collecting duct. These are surrounded by a network of capillaries. The cells lining these parts of the tubule can absorb ions from the ultrafiltrate and pass them into the blood capillaries. Ions, of course, would be dissolved minerals. Don't forget that, such as potassium ions, chloride ions, sodium ions, and so on. Although nutritionists would warn you about your sodium intake, remember that you still need sodium in your diet. Huh? It's very important, but you don't get it from salt alone. You get it from many other products. So you don't need to be adding too much by using a lot of salt. And sodium is an important factor in raising people's blood pressure. So you just want to moderate that. Let your taste buds get accustomed to less salt. Cells lining the second coiled tubule, which would be the distal convoluted tubule, absorb minerals. Why do they say mineral salts? They gone back old school because I noticed they did not say distal convoluted tubule as they have in the diagram. They just use the normal word. Anyway, cells lining the second convoluted tubule absorb mineral ions from the ultrafiltrate and pass them back into the capillary. However, the major function of the second coil tubule and collecting duct is to reabsorb water. Okay. And whatever is missed in terms of the mineral ions in the first tubule, most of it is already reabsorbed, but whatever remains is absorbed in the second tubule. Now, the volume of water reabsorbed by the second coil tubules and collecting ducts depend on how much water there is in the blood. If the blood is dilute, for example, after drinking large volumes of fluid, less is reabsorbed from the ultrafiltrate, resulting in a greater quantity of dilute urine. If the blood is too concentrated, for example, after excessive sweating or eating large amounts of salty food, more water is reabsorbed, resulting in a smaller volume of more concentrated urine. Hope nobody in here does eat salty food like 3 buckets of KFC one time. I went and I bought calling bigger name, man. I bought chicken and chips by Bigger with my bright self. I don't know if it changed now, but it's mostly 3 years ago also. Went to buy chicken by this man who does sell chicken in town. He didn't have any. He didn't want the thing by the chicken chop. So the friend and I said, well, let me try Bigger. Boy, I couldn't eat them. I couldn't eat that thing, boy. Salt like brine.
And chicken hoxie.
I bring it home for the dog. I wasn't going to waste my money, so the dog eat. We had to go look for something else. So it really, really was too salty. That would have to boil out for me. I don't know if it was a mistake or accident that the salt went in too much, or if that is the actual way they do it. But whichever, I didn't go back to find out. I have never gone back and bought anything there. They made a fatal error. Write me off long time. I don't like buy food in tongue like them kind of way. If I buy food, I want food. You know, it's food. Them things is not food. Them fast food thing ain't food. Food is when you have like your rice, your salad, your pie, and your vegetables. And come on, look like a home.
Restaurant.
Even if it's a bailey, that's food. Well, we'll fry up some chips and some chicken and call that food for me. No, that's a fast food snack. Okay, let's see if we can finish up this reabsorption thing because it's almost there. This diagram is going to show the summary of the whole kit and caboodle. Trying to get, if I go bigger, then you would not be able to see. I know. If I do it this way, I should be able to come over here. I'm just trying to make it look bigger on your device if you're using a mobile device. So, okay, this diagram shows a summary of reabsorption along the length of the nephron. So first, you have ultrafiltration taking place. Let me go a little before that. You have blood coming to the kidney by the renal artery. And one of these arterioles, small artery from the renal artery, would come to this structure called the Bowman's capsule. So it enters the Bowman's capsule as a wider blood vessel, forms a network of capillaries inside here, and leaves as a smaller blood vessel so that the blood inside of the capsule would be under pressure. You're forcing into a large vessel and coming out to a small one, you will have pressure in here. Ultrafiltration takes place and substances such as mineral ions, glucose, water, and amino acids pass over into the glomerulus, which is part of the nephron or kidney tubule. So just a little distance away, proximal to it, you have the proximal or the first convoluted tubule. Much of the mineral ions and salts and so on that were filtered out are reabsorbed, but just the amount that is needed. So selective reabsorption, 70% of the water, all of the glucose, some of the salts, and some of the amino acids are reabsorbed. But by this time, all the glucose should be back in. The body ain't playing around with that. And down in the loop of Henle, some of the water is reabsorbed. Then you come up to the second convoluted tubule, some more water is reabsorbed and the remaining salts are reabsorbed and amino acids and whatever else. So that the fluid going in here now would contain substances such as mineral ions that were in excess, and it would also contain some urea. And these little branches you see are coming from other kidney tubules. This will go down to the pelvis. So your brain would be responsible for detecting those differences in water concentration and determine how permeable to make the nephron. It determines how much water would be reabsorbed. But we'll come to that when we look at homeostasis in more detail. Let's just look at the table to show the concentration of the blood. Where is that? There we go. The concentration of important substances in plasma, ultrafiltrate, and urine. The plasma, of course, is the plasma in the blood vessels that came to the kidney. The ultrafiltrate is the substance that came out of the glomerulus. Okay, the ultrafiltrate would be what is inside here. What is inside here would be the ultrafiltrate. And then the urine, of course, would be whatever remains after it passes from the nephron into the pelvis, going to the bladder. So we're going to compare what is in here with what is in here and what is in the plasma. No, I didn't mean to get that one. What is in the plasma? Yeah. We're going to compare these three: in the plasma, in the blood vessel, in the ultrafiltrate, and in the urine. So let's see what the table says. Urea. In the plasma, you have 0.03%. In the ultrafiltrate, you have 0.03%. And in the urine, you have 3%. In the, where are we? In the water, sorry, for water in the plasma, you have 91, I said percent, I didn't mean percent. I mean grams per liter. dm cube is 1 liter, cubic decimeter is 1 liter. So grams per liter. In the water, you have 91 grams per liter. In the ultrafiltrate, you have 99 grams per liter. And in the urine, you have approximately 96 grams per liter. And this is variable depending on how thirsty the person is and how much water they might have lost from sweating and so on. I want you to notice these. Those are the same. In the glucose, for glucose in the plasma, you have 1 gram per liter. In the ultrafiltrate, you have 1 gram per liter. But in the urine, there's none. For mineral salts, you have 0.4 grams per liter. You're going to allow some to pass. You're not going to reabsorb some. So in the ultrafiltrate, you have 0.7, which is higher, but in the urine itself, you have a very large number, 1.2. In the plasma for the protein, you have 8 grams per liter, but in the ultrafiltrate, none. So no proteins leave the blood and come into the filtrate. So for the substances that increase in the urine, you have an increase in urea, you have an increase in mineral salts, and you have an increase in water. But for these last two, the amount would vary based on conditions in the person's body as to like the concentration of the blood, how thirsty they are, how much sweat they're sweating, how much water they lose into the skin and all those other things. Okay. The next topic we would need to look at, but not today, would be kidney failure. We have to look at the kidneys and health. And that would bring us on to dialysis. So basically that is what, in terms of the kidney, we'd have to look at that. But remember, under this excretion topic, excuse me, we have a subtopic called homeostasis that basically covers what goes on in the kidneys and the skin and the lungs too. But we have to look at the function of the skin in excretion and the function of the lungs in excretion. For homeostasis, we'll also look at temperature regulation and sugar regulation. So in this chapter, you can go ahead and read up that, or you could also, a smart thing to do with this book, I used to give students this part. Let me go to the end of the chapter. There's always a chapter summary that would be your notes. Page going too slow. Let me speed it up. Or some acne there. Okay. returning to size. You have chapter summary at the end of each unit in this textbook. And look there. Excretion is the removal of toxic waste products, blah, 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 blah. You have examples of substances that need to be removed. The excretory organs, what they are, what the kidney does. Talk about the kidney tubules, ultrafiltration, loop of Henle, the whole rundown. And then they would go on to deal with the skin and so on that we didn't look at yet. So one thing you should always make sure you do is read the chapter summary. That is your notes. That basically summarizes everything that the chapter dealt with, the most important point. And in these books, they tend to give you key terms in the margin. I just go back till I find one and show you what I mean. I'd have to. Okay. So long. Okay, yeah, look here. Like this area. So they would do that from time to time too. So I'm going to ask you some questions before we close down. See if you remember anything. Oh yeah, tired. Not going to ask you what is excretion. Can you name any of the substances that the body needs to get rid of? The body needs to excrete any of the substances. I'm going to stop the share.
Mineral salts.
I didn't hear.
Mineral salts.
Mineral salts, yeah. You said something before that? Yeah, mineral salts is one.
Water.
Water, yes. Carbon dioxide and so on.
Okay.
What about glucose?
No, you better use it and
Okay.
store it.
All right, your body, when you digest proteins, they're broken down. The end product is amino acids, and these are absorbed into the blood. Your body cannot store amino acids. What happens to the amino acids?
Yeah, form a different.
You're on the right track, you know.
No matter. Yeah, mixed with carbon dioxide form a different.
A different substance.
Substance.
Right. So you have deamination, which removes the nitrogenous part of the thing from the sugar part. So you have a sugar part being stored, and that other nitrogenous part, which is like ammonia, that is combined with carbon dioxide to form urea. So that's what you were saying, which is less harmful than the accumulated amino acids. But that in itself is also toxic, so that is converted to urea. Which organ is mainly as the most important for the removal of urea from the body?
Yes.
It can't be the lungs because you don't exhale it.
No.
You know what urea is converted to?
Liver.
Well,
Urea.
the
Kidney.
liver, the kidney. The kidney is the answer. Because the
Yeah.
liver helps to make the urea. And
Yeah,
the kidney helps to change it to urea. So the kidney is most important to do that. Some of the substances in the blood that are brought to the kidney are filtered. Let me see if you remember this big word here. Okay. Now this wider blood vessels that enter the kidney tubule, it forms a knot. It's like a knot of capillaries bundled up together. Start with a G. Remember the word? The word I say people spell wrong?
glomerulus.
Yes, glomerulus. And that glomerulus is located inside of another structure, kind of bowl-shaped structure. You remember the name of that? Named after a person.
Bowman's capsule.
Bowman's capsule. Right. And after the Bowman's cup, well, some substances are filtered into the Bowman's capsule. We call it ultrafiltration. But there are some substances that do not pass. Can you name one of the substances that never passes from the blood into the ultrafiltrate? Amino acids go over. Glucose go over. Proteins can't go over.
Sure.
Proteins can't go over. And then anyway, the filtrate travels through the force convoluted tubules or the force set of coils, and most of the substances are reabsorbed there. And down the loop of Henle, you have some absorption of water also. And coming back up, you're going to have another convolution where the remaining substances that need to reabsorb are reabsorbed. Remaining in this tubule now is what we call urine. And that empties out, the tubule empties out into the pelvis, which joins up with the ureter. So the urine goes down into the bladder. Now in the urine, you're gonna have a higher amount of some substances. You know any of the substances that would increase the amount? You have like glucose, urea, water, mineral ions or salts. So let me ask you this question. In the urine, as compared with the blood that came into the kidney, would you have a higher concentration of urea in the urine? Yes, you would.
Yeah, urea, make urine.
Right, you must have a higher amount. Okay, so the blood that enters we compare the blood that enters in the kidney with the urine. What about mineral salts or mineral ions? You have more in the urine or less?
Salt.
Mineral salts.
Mineral salt. In urine.
Mm-hmm.
When you come from where?
We're talking about the urine. After the urine has been formed, we're comparing that with what is in the blood that came to the kidney, compared with the urine that was made. We want to know if you have more mineral salts in the urine than in the blood plasma.
In the urine?
Yes, in the urine you'd have more. You would have more water. Let's see another no. Now there's a particular organ that breaks down red blood cells and produce bile. What is that organ? Which organ does that?
Oh, again,
Breaks down the red blood cells. Not healthy red blood cells now. When they don't finish doing the time, they finish doing the time. They're broken down. And bile pigments. You can get it.
It sounds funny.
Ria, you're not hearing a song coming from your mic there. Okay, so it will be the liver. Liver makes the produces bile, and that is stored in the gallbladder. But like I told you, I wanted to finish earlier, but I still didn't want to shortchange you because I have to go and organize myself to go deal with this issue. So ladies and gentlemen, we will lift our anchors, chop our anchors here for today. If you have any questions, you could shoot them now. But other than that, that will be all for today.
So I page that topic in there.
Hold on. I'm scrolling back up to the beginning where I started. So taking me a while to get there. In fact, I closed that book already. Unit 5, Unit B5, and the page is 175. It starts
179.
175.
So we have to study up them, like if you dry kidney, you have to
Yes,
label
we
them.
have to draw the kidney
Okay.
tubule and the superstructure of the kidney.
Kidney tube.
Or you could say the nephron.
Okay.